Eddie, thanks for talking to us. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Eddie Forero. I am an ECHO instructor. I'm a CWNE as well, CWNE 160. I founded a company called CommunicaONE about 7 or 8 years ago, and been doing wireless since that day. I love doing it. It's my favorite thing. I also have a blog called BadFi that has some interesting stuff on it. Yeah.
So how long have you been working in wireless, and how did you first get into it?
So that's an interesting question. So my background is voice. I was a voice guy for years. I did Nortel phone systems, and then I eventually got into IT kind of stuff, doing servers and things like that. And I was working for a company in like 2006, 2007, and they wanted to get into wireless. I didn't know anything about wireless other than putting wireless at my house, and started looking at different vendors. We picked a vendor and I started working with it. It happened to be Aruba, and I started doing Aruba installations. And so for about a couple of years I did that. I got the Aruba training and stuff like that. And then around 2009 I started my own company, primarily to do voice because that was still my background. But then quickly I found out that I really just didn't enjoy voice, that Wi-Fi was much more interesting to me. So I wound up kind of moving away from voice, eventually just within 2 years, just dropping it all together and focusing solely on Wi-Fi. And that was like around 2009, and then around 2011 or so is kind of when I discovered that I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to put in Aruba stuff, I knew what boxes to check, and I knew how Aruba had certain features and things like that that I liked and I still like. But I didn't really understand wireless and how Wi-Fi worked. And that's when I started my discovery process. I had a class with the great David Westcott, who is half of the writing team, Dave Westcott and Dave Coleman, who wrote the CWNE guide. And he started teaching me, it was an Aruba class, but he started teaching us Wi-Fi fundamentals, and it blew my mind. And right there I bought the CWNE book, and I was like, I got to learn about this stuff. Which next brought me to learning about other people like Keith Parsons on Twitter, and I started following him and other people. And one day I reached out to him and asked him, hey, could I ask you some questions? And he was more than willing to answer any questions I had. And really it was more of a bunch of questions to me, where he was asking me, how do you do this? How do you do that? How can you call yourself a wireless person if you don't know how Wi-Fi works? Anybody who's worth their salt should have at least a CWNA. And I was like, whoa, I don't know anything. I need to start learning. And so Keith has been a wonderful, one of those people that has been just awesome to me and really helped me a lot. And that's really where I got my start. Right around 2011, I started learning, fixing my mistakes. Then I started going down the CWNP path, the Certified Wireless Network Professional, became a CWNE about 3 years ago. And I've never looked back. I love it. And so when I had the opportunity to teach wireless design with ECHO, I jumped at it. I was like, absolutely, I'm totally down for doing that. I love the product and I love Wi-Fi, so why not? It's a perfect mix.
So how did you first come across ECHO then, and what is it you like so much about the software?
So the first time I remember hearing about ECHO, but I couldn't afford ECHO. I was still kind of coming up in the ranks, and I really couldn't, I didn't have those tools, but I knew I wanted that tool. So the tools that I were using were very inefficient, not very good. I finally got an opportunity to get my hands on it at the first WLPC Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, probably about 4 years ago, I guess it has been now. And we got like a trial copy. Everyone at the conference got a trial copy of ECHO. And once I started using it, it was like light and day. I mean, the stuff that I was using was so beneath what the capabilities of ECHO was that I instantly knew it was something I had to have, started saving my pennies, and knew that at the first opportunity I was going to buy ECHO. And I finally got to purchase my own copy, and that's what I use. That is my professional tool for designing and surveying wireless networks.
Great. So we're big fans of badfi.com. So can you explain sort of how badfi.com came about and
Sure.
sort of what its purpose is?
Sure. it came out of that same conference when I got my hands on Ekahau. Keith Parsons, who puts on the conference, was talking about how, hey, if you're a wireless professional, you really should be involved in the community. So get on Twitter and be involved in the conversation. And I already was, so that was great. But he said, you should really be out there blogging, and don't make it too complicated. When you run into something, you have questions, you want to figure something out. How does this work in Wi-Fi? Talk about your experience. That's a way to blog about it. If you have experience of some kind, you want to share it with the community. So that night, like the first night of the conference, I started a blog. It was not Bad Fi at the time. And then what happened was we were having a conversation on Twitter several months afterwards, and people were posting pictures. I'm sure I posted something of just ridiculous installations, APs hanging from wires and really funny things. And somebody, I totally admit, I stole this. We were coming up with different what you should call it, and somebody said Bad Fi. And my next tweet was, I'm stealing that. I am buying that domain. And that night I bought the domain and I switched over whatever my blog was called at the time to Bad Fi. Yeah. And I started posting pictures that I already had of installations that I thought were humorous. And then eventually, it's not even mine anymore, in the sense that most of the stuff that goes up is stuff that people have sent me that they see from all around the world and they find humorous, and I wind up putting it on the Twitter feed, on the Bad Fi Twitter feed, or on the Bad Fi blog with comments. I explain why this is wrong, why this could cause problems. I don't try to have just pictures on there. Some of them are just there to be funny, but most of them are there to be informative. Yeah, this is funny and it's silly, but this is why it's bad.
So if somebody wants to send you something, then how do they get in touch?
The easiest way is go to badfi.com, and then there's a link at the top for email. Just submit it to me, and then or the Twitter account. Just go to the Twitter account. Same thing. Go to badfi.com, click on the little tweet icon, and then you can just send me a message. And most people, that's how they do it. They actually just send me the picture and just say, I can't believe I saw this in an airport in Singapore, and they'll shoot it to me on Twitter, and then I'll repost it, and I'll make a comment on it, and if it's something that I haven't gone over before, I'll put it on the blog, and then I'll put some more details, a couple of paragraphs underneath explaining why it's wrong.
Okay, so through your time of running Bad Fi then, what would you say is the sort of most common mistake? What are the big no-nos when you're positioning an AP? The biggest problem that I see is people not understanding antenna patterns, how they actually function. So they place the APs in a way that is suboptimal, to put it nicely, because they don't understand the way the antenna works. And that just typically goes because somebody hasn't looked at the PDF file for the document for that AP to see how the antenna pattern actually propagates, or even understands how an antenna pattern works. So obviously that's one of the things that I have talked about on my blog. This is how you read an antenna pattern. This is how you know which way to properly position your AP. But that's probably the most common. The second most common is APs placed directly on metal. And so that causes all kinds of issues, from distortion to reflections that can damage the amplifiers within APs, things like that. That's also very, very common. Okay, Eddie, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the course.
Absolutely.